Good day to you all. In preparation for high school's debate challenge national competitions happening from the 1st to the 4th of August 2025 at Amaimogabe Senior School, I'd like to briefly touch on what a motion is. So what is a motion? A motion in its simplified definition is the guiding statement that guides the debate, and it can come in the form of a claim, a proposition, or a resolution which both sides argue either for or against depending on what side of the house you are. And basically, we have four common types. Although there are many more, I'll give the four most common types for purposes of this video. We have principal motions, we have policy motions, we have regret motions, and we have actor motions. So what do these motions look like? A principal motion usually starts with "this house believes that." It focuses on the belief aspect because it wants us to interrogate the moral or the ethical side of whatever is being debated on. We also have policy motions, which then come in the form of "this house would." So normally it implies an action to be taken, which is often in the form of a policy to be executed. Those motions tend to focus more on the pragmatic or practical side of the debate, with intended consequences or impact on a particular group. So principal motions still focus on pragmatics, but they tend to focus more on the moral and ethical side of things. Whereas policy motions do focus on the practical side of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we should ignore all ethical or moral argumentation, as those are also usually the backbone of many policies that are implemented. We then have regret motions. Regret motions force us to retrospect and look at a specific point in time and the consequences up to the present moment or present continuous. So to regret something, you don't always have to focus only on the intention, but it means that the intended outcome is no longer the reality being faced, or what we thought would be the outcome is not what have occurred. So when you regret something in a regret motion, you have to take us back and show us why the current status quo or why the results of a particular action or activity have not benefited the intended group or society. So we call that a retrospective analysis. Many teams fall into the trap of arguing advantages and disadvantages, which then takes them out of context. We also have actor motions. They come in the form of "this house as," and they force you to take the position or perspective of a particular community, society, group, or institution. This house as high schools, this house as the civic society, this house as the government would. So you have to take on the analysis and interrogate the debate from the perspective of the actor who is in the motion. There are motions that can also be a combination of both. For example, "this house as government regrets such and such," or "this house as high schools believes that we should implement a particular policy." And those motions then force you to evaluate the perspective from an actor, look into the moral and ethical side, but also propose a policy that has pragmatic and practical beneficial outcomes for the targeted group. So you need to understand how to evaluate a motion even before you begin constructing your cases and building your arguments. I'll finally touch on what we like to call the spirit of the motion. As I mentioned earlier, it's often that teams rush into building cases or arguing advantages and disadvantages. But to every motion, there's a problem that we want to solve. There are circumstances in society that bring up the motion. The reason a motion is contentious is because there's a problem that needs to be solved. So whenever you approach a motion, before you build your arguments, ask yourself, what is the actual problem that has resulted in the creation of the motion that we want to solve? And what is the cause of that problem? And how can we solve the deeper problems that result in the motion we have today? When you analyze and evaluate motions on that level, your characterization and framing become more advanced, your arguments become more nuanced, your extensions become more unique, and you gain an advantage in whatever debate you're in. So in brief, that is an introduction to motion analysis and evaluation.